South Park has returned with Snow Day, an action-adventure game that deviates from the gameplay of the Stick of Truth and Fractured Butthole. Now, the turn-based action has been replaced by open combat, but how well does that translate? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned to find out. The town of South Park has been struck by a snowstorm that's causing chaos as well as casualties, but the only thing on Cartman's mind is the next day being declared a snow day to get the day off school. Well, Cartman's wishes granted and South Park Elementary is closed for the day, so Cartman rounds up the rest of the gang to play, as well as informing us, the new kid. We jump straight into the character creator where you've got a decent amount of customization options. Now, the game has taken a new art direction, scrapping the 2D style featured in the last two games in favour of 3D. Now, this did remind me of the South Park game that came out on the PlayStation 1 all the way back in 1999. When we take control of our character, we're told that we need to head to South Park Elementary, with this first part of the game essentially being a tutorial. You have access to a basic attack, a charged version, as well as a ranged attack. For the most part, you're going to be spamming the basic attack and using your ranged attack to pick off more tanky enemies. You can jump, sprint and dodge roll. Now, your dodge roll is on a timer, so you can't just spam it, and your sprint is also tied to a stamina system. The dodge roll timer is fine, you're rarely in a situation where it needs to be spammed, and the sprint being tied to stamina, that's also okay, as you're only ever really sprinting to the next enemy or the next objective. The game uses a card system, with cards serving as your powers. You can have up to 2 of these equipped at any one time, and you can mix and match these to suit your playstyle. You unlock all of the powers through natural story progression, so don't worry about any of these being missed. Now, I only used 2 powers through my entire run, which were the healing totem, which healed me and my allies inside of its radius, and a bubble that repelled enemy ranged attacks. You have a HP bar, and there's plenty of healing items scattered around, enemies drop cheesy poofs, and you can also use your healing totem. Now, your powers are tied to your pissed off meter. You get more pissed off when you attack enemies, and this fills up pretty quickly. You'll generally be able to use your abilities as much as you want, which I did like. There's a few forms of currency. You have TP, which lets you reshuffle the cards Jimmy offers, as well as upgrade their rarity, PP, which lets you buy new clothing, and Dark Matter, which lets you unlock new perks. Straight off the bat, the combat isn't as good as the previous 2 games. It's a little bit janky, there's no form of lock-on system, and this can lead to you attacking thin air despite an enemy being relatively close to you. I did notice that the attacking noises are either quiet, or there's no attacking noises at all. I'm talking about your weapons hitting an enemy and the sound letting your brain know that we're making contact. Now, this isn't a deal breaker, so hopefully they can patch this.
I'm just doing my job. Ow, too hard.
The bow and arrow handle fine, and you can get some great upgrades for this the more that you play, which brings us nicely onto upgrades. Throughout each level you'll encounter Jimmy, typically after each battle. He'll offer you upgrade cards that add additional benefits to your powers, for example my healing totem's range being increased, as well as reviving my allies if they go down in it. The game provides you with free NPC allies if you don't have any human players in your party. They do aid you in battle, though they are a bit hit and miss. They can either play really well or find themselves down due to running into enemy attacks. Cooper Keep acts as our game hub. Here you can speak to Mr. Hankey, who provides access to Dark Matter perks.
You're the new kid, aren't you? It's me, Mr. Hankey.
Some of these including increased health and attack power, Tweak and Craig who sell you new outfits, Token lets you change your weapons and powers, and Henrietta who we'll touch on a little bit later, as well as Cartman who leads the war table. Now, the war table lets you select which chapter you want to play, adjust the difficulty, as well as enable matchmaking. Butters is at Cooper Keep too, but he's so useless I'm not even going to mention what he does. At the start of each chapter you'll have a meeting with the enemy leader, and they will play a bullshit card which gives them an advantage in combat, but you get to play your own bullshit cards too. For example, this enemy was upgraded to a vampire which gives them increased health and new attacks. The bullshit system was a little bit disappointing, as I never had to do anything differently. The majority of the game you'll be spamming the attack button, which I continued to do when the bullshit cards came into play. The objectives in each level essentially boil down to go here, kill this mob and pick up that item, followed by go here, kill here and pick up that item. The game mods are pretty barren and empty, and it does feel like a corridor system as you can't really deviate from the path that the game wants you to take. If you do try and deviate from the set path, you may be greeted by an old friend, the invisible wall. Man, it's been a while since I've seen one of these. Now, there are some NPCs in each chapter, but they'll just repeat their same voice lines repeatedly. As I mentioned earlier, the combat is you spamming the attack button over and over again until all of the enemies are dead. You never need to use the charged attack, and if you put up a healing totem in the middle of enemies, you don't even need to dodge. Here you can see the game telling me to equip a Dark Matter perk despite me already having one equipped, and here you can see a map indicator pointing in a completely random location. If you or your allies get knocked down after losing all your HP, you'll have to stand in their revive circle to get them back up. Now, there are boss battles that do introduce you to new mechanics. For example, this battle with Kyle, he'll summon damaging fawns. You'll see the area of effect followed by the fawns doing damage. You have a few seconds to react and evade the attacks. Now, this boss battle was easy, but I did notice how useless my NPC allies can be. They were sticking close to me despite having a ranged battle, and also kept getting down by the fawns. At the end of each chapter you'll see all of the challenges you completed, powers unlocked, as well as the accolades that your character earned. For example, I got the sponge accolade here for taking taking the most damage. I did spend a few minutes trying to find a way to exit the game as well as a way to save. The game doesn't make this apparent, but there is an autosave feature. The only way to close the game is to close/quit the application entirely. Now the writing and cutscenes, however, are typical South Park. I have every season on DVD and have been watching the series ever since its release, so trust me when I say this is the one area of the game that won't let you down.
Someone got all OP again and fucking ruined that game too. And now because of that someone, we've had to add a bunch of fucking rules. And then
I wanted to test out the multiplayer functionality for one of the chapters, so I hosted a lobby and no one joined at all. I had it open from the moment I started the chapter until I finished it. I thought nothing of it and went into the next chapter with my NPC allies. I actually managed to go down here and so did my NPC bots. If you do get squad wiped, you get taken back to Cooper Keep and you have to redo the chapter again. There are no checkpoints. After a dismal performance from my NPC allies, I decided to try and join someone else's lobby who was also on the same chapter. It was at this point I had a revelation, and I'll get into what that was shortly. So in this chapter it was just me and one other player, with the rest of the lobby being filled by bots. The game played in the exact same manner, but then something happened. 2 more actual players joined the lobby and replaced the bots, giving us a full party of 4. This brings us on to the revelation. I was having fun for the first time. There were some new mechanics introduced and all 4 of us would go off and complete objectives whilst having each other's backs. Our powers complemented each other and it was far more enjoyable experience than the bots. There were no connection issues, no lag, and the gameplay was smooth. I was previously treating the game as a single player experience, but it isn't. If you lobby up with friends or online players, I think you'll have a fun time. For the rest of the game I was only lobbied up with other players and ditched the bots entirely. This of course is if you can get into a game in the first place. Now I tried joining other sessions, hosting my own sessions, which all resulted in a matchmaking failure. There were times I would manage to get into a lobby only to be kicked out a few seconds later. Now I'm unsure if this was problems on my end or if this was server-sided, so please be wary. The game is very short and can be completed in 5 hours. If you want to get all the collectibles and side content, you could simply add a few more hours onto that. Once completed, you can continue playing and go through all the chapters again, perhaps on a harder difficulty, try out the new weapons and upgrade, as well as play the dance game mode. Earlier we mentioned Henrietta being in Cooper Keep. She shows you the dance game mode. Dance send waves of enemies at you, and once all of them are killed, another wave begins. At the end of each wave you can collect an upgrade from Jimmy or Henrietta. You do have access to cannonballs which you can load into cannons for more damage, but this really isn't necessary. There are some dark matter caches after each wave, so make sure that you collect these. Once you've collected all of the waves, you receive some currencies and you're taken back to Cooper Keep. We did try and find other players online for the dance game mode, but we encountered network errors and couldn't find any lobbies. The game warns us that playing by ourselves will be deadly, but this was pretty easy in all honesty. Snow Day is an inferior game to the Stick of Truth and Fractured Butthole in every way. Snow Day isn't a bad game, but it's not a good one either. It's mediocre, and if you go in with average expectations, you'll have a little bit of fun. My one concern is the lack of network functionality. The game has just been released and it's difficult to play with others online. To me, this was the only fun part of the game. So in a month, will anyone still be playing? Will it be impossible to get a lobby at that point? There are issues the developers are going to need to figure out. More so because there's a season pass for the game which features additional online content. I paid £22 for a physical copy of the game, or $27, and I'm actually okay with this price point, especially considering that I got a physical copy. If you want a South Park fix and are prepared for a short and average experience, then go ahead and pick up Snow Day, but just don't be expecting anything close to the previous 2 games. The game is a burger and fries, with no salt and pepper on the fries and no garnish or sauce in the burger. Ladies and gentlemen, subscribers and non-subscribers, thank you very much for watching. Like my review if you enjoyed it, comment if you've had a similar experience, and subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to see more content just like this. I'm Senor Donut. Peace out. Don't bury your son's body at the Indian burial ground, Starch. The one right over there behind Anderson's bar.